Testing the efficiency of your grit removal system is the best way to ensure you're maximizing its operating potential, as seen in this Hampton Roads Sanitation District case study. I'm Brady Goodman, and in this three-part series, we'll review several critical components in this HRSD case study on producing a legitimate evaluation of your grit removal system. In this series, we'll cover testing methods and how to avoid test errors up to 40%. Small installation changes that can lower rather than improve grit removal efficiencies, and using the correct performance criteria for the stated equipment and its grit removal efficiency design. First, let's cover testing methods and how to avoid test bias up to 40%. What testing methods are out there? The two most widely known and used grit testing methods are cross-channel sampling and vertical integrated sampling. These two very different methods differ based on how and where the samples are collected. Cross-channel sampling uses a single probe that samples across the full width of the channel, collecting grit sample at 6 sample points. CCS can access specific areas of the channel and allows for identifying precisely where the grit path is in the channel, as grit does not flow uniformly in a channel. CCS can also move the probes from on the floor to any point within the channel to determine how much grit is flowing through at that point. Vertical integrated sampling is normally placed at one location in the channel and not moved. It uses a vertical slot to capture grit in just a single center column of the channel. Because it does not move and it creates its own velocities that push grit away from the probe, it does not capture a representative sample of grit. Now that we've covered the tests, let's look at our case studies. Two different efficiency tests were performed on two vortex grit chambers at two different Hampton Roads Sanitation District wastewater treatment plants. The first grit test was performed in 2007 on a 270-degree vortex grit chamber installed in 1988 and written up as a WEFTEC paper. The grit sampling method used was the VIS method. The second test was performed as part of the equipment startup protocol on a 2010 installation of another Hampton Roads Sanitation District plant. This time, they used the CCS method to test for grit removal. The results using samples acquired using the VIS method indicated a lower grit removal efficiency of the unit. A new stack tray pilot unit was tested in 2007 at HRSD at the same time using the VIS method, and the grit removal results were also low. In fact, they were so low that it did not meet its published removal efficiencies. In comparison, samples collected using the CCS method at the 2010 HRSD installation noted earlier indicated the removal efficiency of the unit met its published removal efficiencies. What might cause these significant differences in the results? A published 2014 WEFTEC paper sheds light on sampling errors inherent in the VIS methodology. The paper states that, in some cases, the sampling error exceeded 40%, which is a very alarming figure to warrant careful evaluation by the practitioners before designing new systems. Modeling also indicated that VIS underestimated the mass of grit by as high as 40%. It also favored lighter particles. This is a major drawback from using VIS at a single location. The paper's CFD modeling and review of the VIS grit test conclude, placing VIS in the center of the channel will lead to significant error is estimating mass grit and its distribution if the grit is flowing on one side and not uniformly distributed over the channel width. This practice should be avoided in the future. Using CCS is recommended when grit is not flowing in the center of the channel. CCS samples across the full width of the channel and at any point, which allows the grit to be located and sampled. Grit is not uniformly distributed across the channel. To have accurate grit removal sampling, it's recommended to use the CCS to clearly indicate the location and concentration of the grit in the channel. Understanding CCS and VIS grit testing methods and which type to use makes a big difference, and it can lead up to a 40% difference in the final results. Make sure you select the correct one. So in today's episode, we covered cross-channel sampling is the preferred grit testing method for grit removal systems to avoid significant sampling errors in comparison to VIS methodology. VIS sampling methods can have up to 40% lower volume of grit captured, which skews test results. Join us for part 2 of this Hampton Roads Sanitation District case study series as we examine how small installation changes can lower grit removal efficiencies, as well as part 3, covering stated performance criteria. Thanks for watching part 1 of HRSD Grit Removal Efficiency Testing. For more information on grit removal, visit gritthefacts.com or contact Smith & Loveless, your longtime trusted source in grit removal system innovation and development.